Good morning. I'm Angus at LabVac, and I'm going to just run through quickly today some information about changing the oil in your oil sealed vacuum pump. It's a question that I get asked all the time. Most common question is, when do I need to change the oil in my pump? And the short answer to that is, I have no idea, which is a useless answer. The reason that I can't tell you a definitive oil change frequency for your pump is it depends entirely on what you're using the pump for. Different applications will cause degradation of the oil at different rates. So you need to work out for yourself, for your application, your process, how frequently that oil change needs to be done. So the longer answer to that is, how do I figure that out? And to do that, you need to check the sight glass on your pump. So on this example pump that I've got here, which is a Welsh CRV Pro 6, there's a sight glass on the end of the pump here, which is literally a sheet of glass that allows me to see the oil inside the pump. And this is going to indicate to me the condition of the oil. So in this case, the oil goes in completely clear, with no colour. Over time, from the heat cycling and the contamination that flows through the pump, that colour is going to darken. So as the colour darkens, that indicates to me that I need to change the oil. So from a clear oil, it will start to go yellow. When it's yellow, you need to change it. If you let it go till it turns brown or even black, then the chances are that's not going to be recoverable without a full strip down and rebuild of the pump. So oil changes are critical to looking after the pump, but you should do it more frequently than you're doing it now. Simple rule. So we check the condition of the oil in there. Check it once a week. If you don't see any changes, check it once a month until you do see a change. Now, in some cases, the oil is going to need to be changed once a week. In other conditions, it's going to need to be changed once a year. Okay, it really depends on that application, and you're going to have to check that sight glass to see what's going on. So while we're on the sight glass, I also want to point out that there are high and low levels marked on the sight glass, and these are important. Your oil level needs to stay between the two marks. If the oil level is too low, fairly obviously, the pump won't be able to pick up oil and circulate it, and you'll cause damage to the pump. But if the oil level is too high, then the oil will be flowing across the top of the valves. It's going to interfere with the performance of the pump. So it does need to stay between those two levels at all times. Some pumps simply have a glass bubble in place of the sight glass. The glass bubble indicates the high and low by the limits of what you can see in there. So you need to see the meniscus, the top of the oil level, within the bubble. If you can't see it, then it's either too full or not full enough. Okay, so that's the sight glass and what it can tell you. It's absolutely important that you keep checking that regularly. A word on the oils that we use themselves. So in a pump like this, of any manufacturer, standard laboratory type pump, I will use this SuperVac 19 oil. So we sell this by the 5-litre container, and this is a hydrotreated mineral-based oil, and you can see it has no colour. This is the clean oil. It has no colour to it at all when it goes in, so it's very easy to see the changes to that. And that will be good for not just the Welsh pumps, but we'll use the same in Edwards, Leibold. The manufacturer's oils that they supply, none of the manufacturers make their own oil. It's all bought in from somewhere. So it is available, like I say, at a lower cost in a more generic form. Some of the pumps that we start to see more and more often now, particularly from backing mass spectrometers, are, for example, the Leibold Sojivac type, the SV type pumps. Those use a different oil. Those use an ester-based oil. The ester-based oils look like this. It's a much more yellow colour. It still changes, it will still darken, but it starts off as a much more yellow coloured oil. And the more generic brand that we use for that is called Androl. It looks kind of like that. Again, it comes in different grades, so you do need to choose the suitable grade for your pump. So that's a bit about oils. If you've got any questions, as always, put them in the comments below or get in touch with me directly. Always happy to talk about pump oils. So let's move on then to the bit you wanted, which is how do I actually go about changing the oil? A few things you're going to need in advance. The first is a suitable container to drain your waste oil. Go big, okay? Most of the pumps that we see on the channel, these laboratory sized pumps, they're going to have about half a litre of oil in them, maybe a little bit more. So you need a good 2 litre jug. The last thing you want is to start draining the oil and then halfway through the process with oil flowing out of the pump realise your container's too small. So get a big jug. You're also going to need a suitable tool for removing the fill and drain plugs on your pump. Most of them will be Allen keys, but they'll be any size that the manufacturers use, so they vary a lot. Check that you've got the right tools in advance. Many of the plugs, like the fill plug on this pump here, are actually a twist type. They do tend to get very stuck, and you may well need a tool, pair of grips, something like that, to be able to just grip onto that. Grip it lightly, not too tight, you don't want to damage, they're usually plastic, and then just give it a tap with your hand, and that should be enough to loosen it off, but they can be very tight. You're also going to need some kind of wiper. I use cotton rags, you can use blue cloth, blue paper, whatever you've got available, because there's going to be a little bit of oil here and there that you're going to need to wipe up, so be prepared for that. You may also want to have some sort of solvent handy, again, just for washing away the spills of oil. And then finally, but most importantly, is the PPE that you need. So I am fully robed in my gorgeous workshop overalls. You'll also want some gloves. You do need to bear in mind that the oil that comes out of the pump will be contaminated with your process. You might also want some kind of face covering. This obviously is a very minimal face covering. This again depends on your process, what you've been using the pump for, but your oil will be contaminated, so take whatever precautions are appropriate for the contamination that you know is in your oil. Okay, that bit's down to you. So having said that, let's just look at how we actually go about doing this. So the first thing to do is to warm up the pump. The reason for that is that the viscosity of the oil in the pump will change depending on the temperature that it's at. So in a cold pump, the oil will be very thick and gloopy. It will be very slow to drain out. If the pump's been warmed up in advance, then the oil will be much thinner and it will flow much more quickly. So the ideal time to do the oil change is after you've just finished using the pump. That's the best time. If you do need to do an oil change from cold, then start the pump up, let it run for 10 to 20 minutes to get up to full working temperature, and you'll find it's much easier to drain the oil with a warm pump. And secondly, with the thinner oil at a higher temperature, it will draw more of the contamination out of the pump as it flows. So you'll get a better, cleaner oil change if you do it with the pump warmed up. So that's an important one. The next thing to do is make sure that you can remove the fill plug. So the fill plug is going to be up on the top of the pump here. This one is easy because this pump's just been serviced. But like I said before, most of these are going to be stuck tight. So you want to make sure that you can actually open that before you drain the oil out of the pump, because if you drain the oil and then find you can't refill it, then the pump is useless until you've sorted that out. So that would be the first thing to do, is make sure that the fill plug is easily removed. The next thing to do is to remove the drain plug and actually drain the oil from the pump. So this particular one needs an Allen key. As I say, they do vary. Check it out in advance. So you just fit the key and open the drain plug whilst holding your jug underneath. So it's at least a two-handed affair. If you can get someone to assist you in doing this, it is beneficial. I will do that in a moment. I'm going to talk through the steps and then I'll illustrate them. So once we've drained the oil, what I'd like you to do then is refit the drain plug and flush the pump. So put in enough fresh oil to come above the minimum mark in the sight glass. Turn the pump on and run it for a minute or two. And then we're going to drain the oil again. Now, what that flushing process actually does is it allows the pump to pick up the fresh oil, circulate it into the mechanism, and by doing so, it forces the remaining old oil out of the mechanism and back into the sump. So then when you do the second drain, you're removing that oil. If you don't carry out that step, then you will have removed most of the oil from the pump, but whatever was in the mechanism when the pump stopped will remain there. It won't come out until it's circulated through with fresh oil. So the flush and second drain actually helped a great deal. Then we'll close up the drain port again a second time, fill the pump up to that maximum level, and then we're done. So it's quite straightforward. It doesn't take a long time. I'm going to illustrate with this pump. I have pre-warmed this pump, but it's probably cooled down a bit while I've been talking away. But I'm going to step over here and show you exactly how I would go about that. So the first thing to do, remove the fill port. It's also worth saying that if you have any accessories fitted to the pump, like a mist filter here, for example, you can leave that in place, provided you open the fill port first. If you don't, if the fill plug's still in there and you've got something blocking the exhaust side, it'll be very difficult for the oil to drain, because what happens is as the oil level drains down, it creates a vacuum itself above, because this would be a sealed container. So unless you've got somewhere for air to get in and replace the oil that's being removed, you'll find that the oil flows very slowly. If you're in that condition and it's flowing slowly and then you open the drain, it will suddenly start to gush out much more quickly and you'll see the difference. So I'm going to put the Allen key into my drain plug. Just make sure, again, this one's just been serviced, everything's moving freely. In your case, it's likely that that's going to be fairly stuck. Then I need to get my container underneath there, just swap hands and remove that the rest of the way. And as I do so, that oil flows out. You can see it is flowing out pretty quickly there into the container. You may well find that you see nasty bits of flakes of horrible things, rust, all kinds of things coming out with that oil. If your oil is severely contaminated when you do an oil change, then you can repeat that flushing process that I've talked about 2, 3, 4 times to help that to clean up. But you may find that every time you drain the oil it still looks black, in which case it is service time. So once it gets down to there and it's reduced to a trickle, I'm just going to lift the motor end of the pump just to make sure I've got everything out. Now, the bench that I'm using here has a solid lip all the way around it, So I'm lifting it against that. The pump will slide if you do that, which is where a second pair of hands comes in handy, if possible. Then I'm going to put my drain plug straight back in. And even after all my years, of which there have been many, I still occasionally forget to do that and start pouring oil in the top of the pump. Don't realise until I can feel it running down my leg. So another tip for you is put the drain plug back in the minute that you've finished draining. That's the draining process. Like I say, I would then put a small amount of oil in, bring it up above that level, flush the pump, drain it again, and then fill it up and be finished. It takes just a few minutes and it will massively extend the life of your pump. So I hope that's helpful information, and I would urge you, whatever frequency you're doing your oil changes now, do it more frequently. Get in touch if you need anything else. Thanks a lot.